you have proposed that Elon Musk receive the Nobel Peace Prize. Why is that?
Because he did much more for the freedom of speech, which is a basic human right, much more than anybody else in the third millennium.
What do you think about European Union regulation designed to regulate the internet?
I think this act should never be accepted as it was. They allow systematic censorship, and I'm against it.
Hello and welcome back to the Brussels Signal studio. My name is Justin Stairs and we have a guest who hails from Slovenia. His name is Branko Grims and he is a member of the European Parliament. He has been a politician for a long time. He was in the first Slovenian Democratic Parliament, and was a politician in Slovenia for 20 years before he joined the European Parliament in June this year. He also has led the Slovenian delegation to NATO and also the delegation on the future of Europe a couple of years ago. That was in Strasbourg, was it not?
Yes, it was in Strasbourg.
Okay, now he is a member of the Slovenian Democratic Party, and here in the European Parliament in Brussels and Strasbourg, the Slovenian Democratic Party sits with the European People's Party, which we normally call a centre-right party. Now, my first question to you is, you seem from the research that we've done on you to be a slightly unusual member of the European People's Party, let's say, in that you're not a fan of the European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen, who normally enjoys support from within that group. The European People's Party is her main backer, let's say. Why is that, please? You voted against her, in fact.
First, thank you for this opportunity that I talk to you and all that are seeing us now. Second, about Ms. von der Leyen, I think that it was a big mistake that the European People's Party voted for her, because she is obviously part of the problem, not a part of the solution. She was leading the European Commission in the last mandate, and we see the point where we are now. So if we want to change it, and we have to change it, we as Europe should go away from cultural Marxism, should cut out all the rubbish about the so-called green movement and everything that's connected with it, and should defend borders, should make the remigration, put everybody that is now misusing our asylum system back from where he came from. And of course, we have to protect our children. And I don't think that somebody who was part of this when it was becoming a problem is the best man for the solution. So I think that somebody else should lead the European Commission in this mandate. But it was voted as it was voted. So I voted against her every time, and I'll do it again if necessary.
And was this the position of your party or not? Did everyone in your party?
Well, in the end, it was the position of my party. Yeah,
okay. And within the European People's Party, the European People's, the EPP group, how many parties voted against her? Do you know? I mean, it's a secret
we
vote,
were not the only ones, so quite a few members of European People's Party voted against, and she received very thin majority, only 6 or 9 votes. Otherwise, she wouldn't even be elected with the Commission in the end.
Right, okay. Now, within the European Parliament, you sit on the Civil Liberties Committee. I wanted to talk to you about Elon Musk and free speech, because I know this is one of the issues that you've been most vocal on. In fact, you have proposed that Elon Musk receive the Nobel Peace Prize. Why is that?
Well, I propose that Elon Musk receives the Nobel Peace Prize for the next year because he did much more for the freedom of speech, which is a basic human right, much more than anybody else in the third millennium.
Right, by which you mean you're talking about Twitter or X, or are you more than that?
More than that, but especially, of course, people all see that X is now really free, as every platform should be, as all internet should be, without censorship. Freedom of speech means that nobody interfere with what you want to say, and so that everything that is said comes to the man who supposed to. And of course, those who want media to be the censors, to be between the truth and what people see about that truth, are now angry. But I think that what happened, and also the election in the end of Donald Trump, is the best what happened for the Western civilization in the last few years.
Now, in English, we sometimes talk about free speech absolutists. That means the people who believe that people should have the right to say anything. Are you one of these people? Elon Musk is sometimes referred to as a free speech absolutist.
Well, free speech is that everybody can say what he thinks, his opinion. And of course, free speech is not that, I don't know, young people can get to pornography, or that even child pornography is published or so. And so we have criminal laws, and those laws are clear. But everything else should be free. So nothing can be censored because, I don't know, somebody is insulted, or somebody doesn't like to hear that, and or I don't know, for some government, also some European government is now a problem because they get criticized and they don't want to hear it. So they say it's against the law, so that they should be censored. So this is when this happens, if it happens, especially if it happens systematically, for example, on the internet, that means that this is not a free country anymore. So we are facing the possibility to become a totalitarian state. So we have to do everything that we keep the freedom of speech as it should be, so without any limitations. And freedom of speech is the first rule, because if we don't have the real freedom of speech, everything else is just a parody. We now don't enter the parody of democracy.
And so, for example, that would mean Russia Today, which is often called a propaganda channel for Moscow, which is banned, as you know, in the European Union. They should have the right to broadcast as well, do you think?
I think that all those limitations are useless, because anyhow people get the information anyhow, or to disinformation if you want to. We just have to make sure that people get also the real information, so people have the right to decide what's right and what's wrong. If we censor, if we cut out some information, then people don't have the whole picture, and then democracy is becoming a problem. And so if we have the systematic censorship on anything, then this is not a free country anymore.
And so, therefore, what do you think about European Union regulation designed to regulate the internet? I'm talking about the Digital Services Act, for example.
I think this act should never be accepted as it was, and I think it should be, best of all, should be put as it was in the rubbish can, or at least changed, and very much changed. So under no circumstances, nothing in this, in any law, not only in this law, but in any law, could be used as something that would systematic censorship would be based on. And some solutions inside this Digital Act are just like that. They allow systematic censorship, and I'm against it.
You said, I don't know, I can't remember what word
you...
you...
The violation of basic human rights. Basic human rights are protected by basic acts like Universal Charter of Human Rights of the United Nations, also the European the acts which are to protect human rights, and this always should be the first concern, that we keep the human right, the basic human right of freedom of speech alive.
And how do you assess the state of freedom of speech here in the European Union?
Well, freedom of speech in the European Union is to quite high extent, fortunately, still here. But we have seen in the last few years many people who tried to abolish it or at least limit it. And so I protested also against when a member of the European Commission wrote a letter to the United States and wanted to censor a part of their talk before the elections. This is something completely unacceptable. As a matter of fact, it's against the basic human rights of freedom of speech, not only those who speak, but also against the basic human rights to all European citizens who should see what is happening. And of course, what will happen in the United States and what has happened will of course affect also the European Union. So it's only the freedom of speech who allows us to, and we must protect it, that we see everything as it is, because it is also something that will affect our lives. I most certainly expect that this, what happened, so I mean that Mr. Trump was elected, what I support. I think this is great news also for Western democracy and also for Europe. But Europe will have to abolish all the nonsense he did in the last few mandates and will turn back to entrepreneurship, to make Europe safe and to make Europe successful. So this is the first thing we have to do. But freedom of speech, of course, is the basics. If we don't have the freedom of speech, we can't even face the real problems. And of course, we can't find the best solutions.
I'm just thinking, in terms of censorship, there is government censorship is one thing, and then there is private sector censorship as well. I mean, obviously, you've seen in the run-up to the US elections, there was controversy about interviews done with President Trump, which there was some big media companies allegedly tried to suppress. I mean, what can be done to protect freedom of speech? I mean, there are the laws, but not everyone has the money to take a company to court. If I have an account which is removed online, you know, I might not necessarily have a lawyer. I mean, what can be done?
Well, that is a hard question, because, but what have we done, what must be done, not what can be done, what must be done, that all those basic charts which protect human rights are completely in power. So we must never forget, for example, now when we see what is happening in the European Union, I think that many people have forgotten about the Convention of Child Rights, for example. And if they wouldn't forget it, some laws about how to put LGBT plus ideology in schools would never be accepted. So we would have to, everybody should be against it. But people, I think, have forgotten those basic acts. And that's why I wrote a book. It's called The Victory of the Good, and it's, as a matter of fact, how to fight the cultural Marxism. And in that book, in the end of that book, I also published the Convention of Child Rights and also the Human Rights Chart from the United Nations and some also other materials, because I really believe that many people have forgotten. Because when I led the Future of Europe delegation from Slovenia, I have spoken many times in Strasbourg, and when I mentioned the Convention of Child Rights, everybody was looking like I'm talking about something that has fallen from Mars. No? So I think that people should remember what is in those charts, and especially we have to be aware that what was in that and the purpose when it was accepted should be remained. We cannot now turn everything around and the words around as they many times do in also in the European politics, unfortunately. and turn things from one to another. For example, the refugees. Refugees, we know what was meant when all the main basic acts were accepted. Was meant to be the man who saved his life or the life of and freedom of their families, of his closest relatives, in the first nearest country, in the first safe country. That doesn't mean you can travel to 10 countries and go there where you get the biggest benefits. That's something completely different. And if we stop mixing all those things and accept as it was when they were accepted, at the moment when they were accepted, then everything would be fine. And this is also the answer to your question, because we have to obey the law as it was. We have to obey all those basic charts as they were, not as somebody now is trying to explain them. That's misuse.
No reinterpretation, is
yes,
that what you mean?
Okay. That's a misuse of jurisdiction. And now we also get through the so-called jurisdiction left-wing ideology.
But I was going to ask you, in fact, you talked about cultural Marxism and the book that you wrote. How would you define cultural Marxism?
Cultural Marxism is Marxism hidden in the culture. It is a product of a long-term process when things start to change. Every single word is start to change its meaning. But it's a small change. But after a long time, nothing is as it was. And now I see three parts, I define them in my book, of cultural Marxism ideology. The first is the so-called LGBT plus ideology, which destroys young and one generation after another in the Western civilization. The second is so-called eco, which is, of course, lime green. It's green on outside and red on inside. And it destroys our entrepreneurship, it destroys our economy, it makes Europe weak. And we should go away from that completely. And what Trump proposed, he says he will abolish the Paris Agreement, and I think that's the best thing we can do, and Europe should follow that, because it's all based on lies. We don't have time that I explain that, but basically I'm a geologist, so if something happens 1,000 times in million years, it's nothing special. But what this lie is based about, because people think that everything that's important happens in their lives, but in geology, things we are looking at much larger scale. So this is.
You're on record as saying that global warming is a big lie. Is that what you believe?
Yeah, of course. It's there is no. Of course, weather is changing all the time, but not because of human. It's because of sun. Sun has everything in nature happens in periods, but in periods, for example, a day or a year in our life, that's a clear period. But in sun, the post periods are longer. For example, 11 years is the shortest period sun has. About how it's strong, how it works, and so on. And some are even far more longer than that. And because of that, all the time we see the change in the weather. But for example, when we see that people are talking now something that we are seeing global warming. But if we go back and look, so of course long enough, that's not 100 years, but thousands and millions of years, we will see that all the new age from that comet who killed all the dinosaurs, practically all the time it was much warmer than it is today. And we even see the so-called Eocene maximum when the whole world was about 10, 12 degrees warmer in average than it is today. Can you imagine that? And even if we have to also know that we were just in the end of so-called Little Ice Age. Little Ice Age is from 1050 year to 870. And now the Earth is warming back to normal. That's nothing special, nothing that would be, there is no climate crisis, as they say. And this is just lie which happens and which causes that somebody can go into your wallet and takes money away and gives the money to somebody who has, of course, benefit from it. And all the billions and billions which are now invested, I don't know, in electric cars or in sun energy and so on, this is wasted. As a matter of fact, we must know that in the long term, of course, in the long term, in geology term of time, we are cooling up, and we are living in the between two ice ages. So sooner or later we'll face the fact that things will get colder and colder, and then what will work? Only nuclear power plants, extremely big hydro plants, because they don't freeze, and of course coal plants, and everything else is just a waste of money. As a matter of fact.
Is this the position of your party?
It is now. It wasn't. It wasn't a long time ago, but now it is. Fortunately.
But it's not. But it's not the position of your group, the European People's.
No, it's not. But I believe that it will soon start to change, because things will go back to normal in America, and because of the strength and the power of America, not only economically but in all ways. Other Europe will have to adopt. And what is happening already, it's also from my book. You have to know that from year 2008 to 2022, GDP in Europe has raised per capita 116 euros. In United States, per capita, 27,800 euros, because Europe has gone to extreme, especially with Greens and so on, and Europe should go away from all this rubbish. Otherwise, Europe is now weak. Europe is losing its power, and it's losing its role. And now the most important things are happening in the Pacific, between China and the United States, and not between on Atlantic, between Europe and the United States. And we should be aware of that, because it affects also our quality of life, it affects our future, it affects our security, and we have to adapt to it. So this is why I said we should have a strong European Commission. Now this is weak, it was elected just like that now. And we should have in this commission new members, members that would be strong enough, known enough to face all those new opportunity. And of course, everything now is Europe facing in the whole world, because the world is changing.
It's funny to hear you speak about the President of the European Commission and also about green policy. Sometimes I get the impression that I'm interviewing someone from one of these hard right parties, but no, your party and your group is not on the hard right. You're mainstream. You're talking like a hard right politician, but you're sitting in a mainstream group.
What is a hard right now? What we have seen in Europe is like that. If it was years ago, I should watch it like this. Years ago, we were middle, then left and right, and then left has gone extreme, extreme, and more extreme left, and pulled everybody behind it. Now we are still at the same point, but they are so extreme left that everybody who is in the right or in the middle, they say it's hard right or extreme right. No, it's not. It's just normal right, as it was 30 years ago, in the time, for example, of Chancellor Kohl. But they are extreme left. And this is the biggest problem we are facing now in Europe. And it's not only the problem in Europe, the same situation is also in the United States, but they have different culture and also have different voting system. And we can see what's the result of it. In the United States, people have voted right, mainly right. And they got the right Donald Trump as president. And people in Europe also, as a whole, have voted right, real right. and they got back Ms. von der Leyen. And they think that's a big mistake for Europe. And
But nevertheless,
it's a lost opportunity for Europe.
Nevertheless, to go by your views, it would seem to me that you and your party are closer to the Conservatives group or the Patriots group in the European Parliament than to the European People's Party. Is that not a fair comment?
Well, I think the all right-wing parties should work together and cooperate. And that doesn't mean only in the European Parliament, but also everywhere else. Because left-wing parties are cooperating all around the world. And that's why they are successful. That's why they are stronger. And that's why the whole world has been pushed far left in the last few years, the whole Western world. And the whole world is starting to incline to some sort of censorship or even totalitarian regime. And because of that, I'm so glad that what happened was the real freedom of speech because of Elon Musk, and that Donald Trump has been elected. Because I think that this is the last chance for the Western democracy, for Western civilization as a whole. And we should abandon everything that stopped our civilization, and we should go back to the core values on which the Western civilization was being created, and these are Christian values. And the same situation is in European Parliament. That's why I always say, God bless you in the end when I stop talking. And when I did it for the first time, some people almost lost their breath. But this is completely normal. Europe has been created on those basic values and should go back to them. Otherwise, we'll be in 2 generations, we'll have no Europe anymore.
I want to go back.
This is our responsibility to our children.
Okay, I want to go back to touch on another subject for those who are in the Brussels bubble, the European Commission and what have you here, because I know that you've been vocal on the subject of the new commissioner from your country, from Slovenia, who goes by the name of Marta Kos. What is your problem with the Slovenian commissioner?
Well, there are quite a few now. First of all, she lives in Switzerland and she pays taxes there. So Switzerland is not a member of the European Union. So it's a little unusual that we have a representative in the European Commission. Second, media in Slovenia has published documents which shows that she was an informer to the former communist secret police, and for all those were condemned by the European Parliament with the resolution about the totalitarianism and European values. And now they have elected somebody who is obviously connected with the totalitarian secret police.
Or at least in the past, anyway.
That was, of course, 30 years in the past.
Right.
Of course. But it's very unusual, and we also know that we still have in Slovenia's deep state, because Slovenia had no lustration, and this is why all those things in Slovenia sometimes go very wrong. And we have extreme left-wing government, probably the most extreme left-wing government in Europe in this moment in Slovenia. This will happen, this will stop on the next elections, but until then it is a problem, not only for Slovenia, but also for the European Union. They have opened borders, so we have now in Slovenia 5 times more, 3 to 5 times more illegal migrations than there were in the time of the former government, and so on. So it's not only our problem, it's also a problem for the whole Europe. And they proposed her, and they, of course, know why they proposed her. And there is also a question of the interests and so on and so on. I could explain it many times, but the whole thing is we have shown to everyone what is the problem there, but still she got the votes, and still
Approved
she was
by
elected.
the parliament, right.
Still she was elected by the Ms. von der Leyen. So I'm not glad about it, and I most certainly have never voted for her, so I voted against.
And finally, before we started this interview, you were talking about the rule of law, and what you said was persecution or prosecution of the leader of your party. Is that correct? What's the situation there?
Well, it's not only in Slovenia. It's a pattern we see all around Europe. For example, in Italy, but now they are persecuting Mr. Matteo Salvini. But in Slovenia, it also goes to extreme, because in Slovenia, as I said, we had no lustration, so we have some organizations and people who are connected with the former regime as well, and those connections are unharmed. And it goes to one generation to the next generation, so already now. No? And one of those, of course, is the juridical system, and what we see is the misuse of the juridical system, especially to stop my party, that's Slovenian Democratic Party, SDS, and our leader, that's Mr. Janez Janša, who twice already led it, also the European Council, or European Union, if you wish, as president, when Slovenia was in presidency of the European Union, and he was also 3 times the president of the Slovenian government. And for a few years ago, it was a process so-called Patria, which was in the end annulled by our constitutional court, and said it was all against the basic human rights. But what happened in the middle? In the middle, we already had the elections, and of course, he was cut out of the elections, and left wings have won the elections at that time. And now the situation is the same. We even have more absurd thing that. Now, because 30 years ago, Mr. Janša privately has bought some house in Trenta, and later, about 15 years later, he sold it. And in the middle time, of course, Slovenia has become a member of the EU, has opened borders, has opened its was in the process of getting close to EU, but what we did is to open the possibility that also foreigners buy houses in Slovenia and everything, and of course prices went up 3 to 5 times, and now they are accusing him because he sold it much more expensive than he bought it. It's absurd from any point of view, and what shows us that this is complete nonsense is that somebody who bought it later has sold it immediately then again for 10,000 euros more than Mr. Janez Janša has got for this. So what is the problem? It's a complete construct, but this construct, of course, takes time, takes money, and in the end he could be even sentenced, if we go back to history, just right before the elections. After the elections, of course, it will be annulled because it's absurd, but the elections will also be under question. This is how the left-wing parties all around Europe are now misusing, as a matter of fact, the juridical system to stop right-wing parties when they have possibilities to get to power. And of course, if it happens, this is the end of democracy. This is the totalitarian regime. It was like in socialism. In socialism, it was, as they said, a weapon to use against those things who think differently. And now things are getting close to that. And
you're right. Use of the courts. You're referring to countries like France. I know that Marine Le Pen
is. It's very obvious that the court, the session against Ms. Le Pen has started when it was clear that she can win the next elections. It's the same as in Italy. It's a warning to all those. And in Slovenia, it's even getting worse because, for example, now it's even against those judges who are really independent. We have a case with Mr. Zvezdan Radonjic. This is one of our judges who wanted to really be independent, and when he was under pressure that he must put somebody to jail in a case where every single data was obvious that he did nothing wrong, and he released that man. But after that, he was under so much pressure that he even lost his health, and he must abandon his position as a judge and so on. And now they have put him in coffins. And although he had from the same court officially that he is ill and he cannot be present in the court and he cannot defend himself. That's obviously against the European norm that everybody should have fair trial and should have a fair opportunity to defend himself. How can he defend himself? And he was ill. And this is the situation in Slovenia now. So it's an extreme case, but it's a warning case, what shouldn't happen and should never happen in Europe. I also wrote about that to the European institution, also to the European Commissions to warn them, but until now they have reacted with no answer, and I'm expecting perhaps that something will change in the next months. But
is this a new phenomenon? I mean, you have more experience than me of the political world. But if the right wing, if the tables were turned and the right wing was in power, for example, would they use the courts against the left wing opposition?
As far as I know, there were no such cases. But this time, the left wings are misusing their people, which they have now in the judgment system, and not only there. Well, we have also similar cases in Poland and in some other countries around Europe. And I think that this is something we should really be careful about, because as far as I have already said, the first is the freedom of speech, but the second must be the rule of law. And it is hidden under the rule of law that we get left-wing ideology hidden as independent judgment. It's not. It's just left-wing ideology, and we should be aware of that, and we should do everything we can against it.
We've run out of time, Branko. Many thanks for coming to the Brussels Signal studio, Branko Grims. Thank you.
Thank you very much for this opportunity, and I wish you all a Merry Christmas.
And Merry Christmas to you. Merry Christmas to our viewers. How about that? See you next time.